Welcome to Glioblastoma, aka GBM, a podcast brought to you by the Glioblastoma Research Organization, highlighting stories of GBM warriors, caregivers, medical advisors, and more. Join us this season as we connect with members of our incredible community and have meaningful and insightful chats regarding all things glioblastoma. Please note that any information provided on the show is not meant to treat, diagnose, or prevent any disease, and all information that is discussed in our conversation is what worked for the individual themselves and should not be taken as advice. The information provided on this show is not a substitute for professional medical advice, and you should contact your medical provider and healthcare team with any questions. Welcome to the finale of Season 2 of Glioblastoma, aka GBM. We have a very, very special guest today, introducing my mother, Elissa Barbach. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here and to share my story with all the GBM family.
I'm excited to have you. So first things first, take us back to 2017. It was September 15th. I left to Madrid because I went to go teach English, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Dad got his MRI the day before.
Actually, everything started September. It was Labor Day weekend of September 17th, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it was Hurricane Irma.
Mm-hmm.
And he was very, very uptight that whole weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And then Labor Day, that Monday, he said to me in the afternoon, I have something to tell you. And I said, what? He says, I haven't been feeling well, and I went for an MRI this week, and they found a tumor in the right side of my brain.
But I took him to get the MRI.
No.
I drove him to the place, the stand-up place.
Yes.
Yeah.
But he told me Labor Day weekend. That's when he told me.
But I took him the day before I left to Spain.
Well,
Did I take him before that?
you must have, but this is when he told me.
Uh-huh.
And he told me he hadn't been feeling well, and then I was thinking probably for the past year, because he was explaining to me that the right brain controls the left side of the body.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized probably for at least a year, a lot of times we would hold hands watching television, that he would hold my right hand with his left hand. And then after a few minutes, he would take it off and say, this doesn't feel right. He would shake his hand. He says, my hand feels numb, my arm feels numb. And I would say, well, maybe, you've been adjusting a lot of patients and, maybe your neck is sore. And then I also realized probably for a year, he was telling me that he would feel off balance. He'd say, I don't feel right, I feel off balance, I feel dizzy. And he actually told me he went for the MRI, and they found a tumor, but they thought it was very small, very benign. He went to see a doctor, and then the doctor that he saw suggested that he go see a neurosurgeon. So he had made an appointment to go see a neurosurgeon later on in the week. And then I went with him to see the neurosurgeon. He did another MRI, and then he really thought it was benign. So he said, we can do surgery or we can watch it. So my husband said, let's just, let's give it a couple of weeks. Let's watch it. He was a functional neurologist, did a lot of homeopathic treatments. He said, I have some things I want to do, some people I want to speak with. I don't want to do the surgery just yet. So the doctor said, okay. And then he started to, proceed and purchase some equipment and do things on his own. And the doctor said, well, I want you to come back in a month. We're going to do another MRI. So for the next month, he proceeded to do, different treatments and, natural remedies. And it was just very, very, I was in shock because this was someone that was just so athletic, so health conscious, slender, gluten-free, dairy-free, hadn't taken a Tylenol in 25 years, did not smoke, did not drink. I said, how could something like this happen to someone that was just so healthy?
Mm-hmm.
And their life was just so health-oriented. I just couldn't understand it. So for the next month or 6 weeks, he proceeded to do a lot of, natural treatments, purchase different medical equipment, certain diet, and we went back to the neurosurgeon, did an MRI, and actually the tumor had grown. The neurosurgeon had said, well, we could do surgery, or there's another option. We can do some procedure called gamma knife, where the radiation is directed into the tumor, and that could possibly break it or shrink it. So my husband said, okay, let's do that. And that was in November. So we proceeded to do the gamma knife. And then a week later did another MRI, but really there was no change. And then I think the doctor kind of knew what was going on, but he did not want to say.
Why?
I don't know. I just think he just kind of knew that maybe it was growing, maybe then it wasn't benign, but I don't think he really wanted to say until he did surgery.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but back, rewind. How did you react when your husband told you that he had a brain tumor?
I was shocked. I was like, how could this happen to someone so healthy?
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't understand it. And I think he was in shock and I was in shock. And he had already gone to see a doctor, which referred him to someone else. And this other surgeon that we were going to was supposedly to be the best in Miami. And so he did the gamma knife. We did another MRI. And I think the neurosurgeon knew that, I think he just really knew what the situation was. And then we did another MRI in December, and then the doctor said, look, we have to do surgery. Let's schedule surgery for January. I don't see any change. And then it was after New Year's, and I remember I said, we really need to make this. He was putting off the surgery. I said, we really need to schedule the surgery. And I just had noticed over time, a couple things I noticed, that everything was left side. And he would normally keep his phone in his left pocket. Well, a lot of times he would take the phone and it would drop on the floor because he would lose the coordination. And that was happening a lot. And then he was telling me that he would be touching his computer keyboard, but he wouldn't feel the keyboard with his left hand. Another thing I noticed was that when he was driving, the left hand would involuntarily slip off the wheel, which made me very scared. And I said, look, I'm going to drive you to work and pick you up because this is very dangerous. So I noticed that symptoms were progressing. So I saw different things were happening. He was more tired. He was leaving work earlier. He was sleeping more lethargic. I saw different things. And so he scheduled the surgery after the new year, and the surgery was January 19th, 2018. Mm-hmm. So, and even then, by that time in January, his walking, he was a little wobbly. He was telling me he was feeling a little more off balance. Another thing is that he had started taking a steroid that the doctor had recommended for him to take, and he started taking that. That's to take down the inflammation. So he'd been taking the steroid for a few months. That didn't really help either.
And the whole time, you guys didn't tell me.
No, we knew. Right, we didn't know.
Why?
He did, because you were away, and he says Amber's in Spain, and I don't want to tell her right now. This is her chance to be abroad, and he wanted you to stay and enjoy yourself. Mm-hmm. So we did. He had the surgery. It was January 19th, 2018, and he went in, and the doctor did another MRI before the surgery, and then basically the MRI, it was like the size of a baseball. It looked like there was even another tumor attached to the main tumor. I think the doctor pretty much knew. So we went in for surgery, and I was sitting there by myself in this little waiting room, all by myself. And then the doctor came in like 2 hours later, and he sits down, no compassion whatsoever. He said, just what I thought, worst possible scenarios, stage 4 GBM, he'll be dead in 4 months.
He said that to you?
Yeah. And I looked at him. I said, what is that? I don't know. He goes, look it up. Google it. I was in shock. I said, I don't know what that is. He goes, look it up. Read about it. He sat with me for 2 minutes, and then he walked out of the room. And there I am sitting there in shock. I had my iPad. I start looking it up and reading that, it's terminal, and there isn't any treatment that can really help. There's things that can prolong it. There was something called Avastin, possibly chemotherapy, but it really will not. There was no treatment for it, and it's basically a situation that is terminal, and there's really nothing you can do. So I was just in shock, and I just didn't know what to do. And then the doctor had said, I'll see him later in the day. And then they brought him, into recovery. And then I went to see him, and he was just very, very out of it. He just, laid there and slept. And I think the next day I said, I'm going to have to tell Amber. I mean, look what I found out. I mean, come on. I said, so I remember I called you. I think I did call you.
Did you tell him you were going to call me?
Yeah, I said, I'm going to call Amber. He was still really out of it. And I said, I'm going to tell Amber. I said, she has to know. I mean, this is not something that's
serious.
This is serious. This is not a tumor that they took out, So I called you, and I know I told you.
You texted me. I was out with my friends at brunch.
I texted you. No, I said I have to speak to you.
You said, "Can I talk? Can you talk?"
I said, "Can you talk?" I didn't.
And you've never in my life once said, "Can you talk?" And I was like, "Oh shit, something's wrong."
I said, I think I said I need to speak to you.
Yeah.
And then I think I said to you, Dad had surgery, and that this is what they found, and it's not good. It's terminal. This is what it's called. It's not good. And then I know you said to me, "Well, I'm leaving. I'm going to book a flight home." Mm-hmm. And
did you feel relieved?
Well, I felt that you needed to know.
Did you feel relieved that I was coming home?
I did. I knew this was probably the beginning of a big change in our lives. Mm-hmm. Having to deal with this. I didn't really know how to deal with this. And he was in the hospital. I believe you came home and went to see him in the hospital when you came home. Or no, you came home.
I got home the 21st.
Okay.
He told me the 20th.
So he came home the next, no.
Yeah, they sent him home way too soon.
Okay, so they sent him home.
And he was like half off the bed. And
they
I was
sent
like,
him
how
home,
are we supposed to get him
and
up?
they brought him, had to have 3 people that worked in the building, because he's 6'2", help bring him upstairs. And he was so out of it. It took about an hour and a half to get him to lay down comfortably in the bed. He just did not have any sense of coordination of where he was. He should not have come home.
Mm-hmm.
And then you came home, and then it was a few days, and then he said he needs to go back in the hospital, right? And you spoke to the doctor, and then we called an ambulance. We brought him back to the hospital. Mm-hmm. And I think he was in the hospital for another week. Mm-hmm. And they started some different therapies, and he was a little better. But the reality is he walked physically into the hospital, and he never walked again.
Yeah.
He just never walked when he came out again after he came out of surgery. Mm-hmm. And then the doctor also said to me that they were not able to get everything. And I know the doctor had also suggested that he wanted to do the surgery with him awake, because sometimes there's more chance of getting the whole tumor if the patient is awake. But my husband did not want to be awake. He wanted to be completely out of it. But that was his choice. But he never walked again. Mm-hmm. So he came home, and he was in bed, and then I had gotten a walker with wheels. So as time went on, he would get up and walk a little bit. He would come to the table and eat. Right, this was January, but he was very tired. He didn't go back to work. Mm-hmm. He didn't go back to work. He had someone come in and cover for him for a while. He thought it would be temporary, but he did have someone that was covering for him. And he was in bed, speaking on the phone, doing what he could do, sleeping, eating. And then we're into February. And basically, I remember trying to bring him into the shower, and, I would help him. And then I remember taking him out of the shower. He would try to sit up from the shower bench, and he couldn't get up from the shower, even into a wheelchair. It would took like 12 times of trying to push himself up. His mobility was just declining, his energy, his coordination.
What was that like for you as his wife to see that?
It was horrible. This was someone that was like a professional athlete that had the best coordination in the world, and everyone he knew how gifted he was, basketball, tennis, golf. He was like, the star basketball player, the best tennis player, the best golfer. And here's was someone that couldn't have the coordination just for the daily living. And it was hard. I couldn't understand how this could happen. Mm-hmm. I had something you just can't understand. And I think he couldn't understand. But, the brain just controls everything. And then as time went on, we had to get a different walker with wheels because he could not move the regular walker. And then over time,
we got a wheelchair.
We got the wheelchair, and he was in the wheelchair, and then we'd get him into the wheelchair and then move him to the table. And then really as time went on, he couldn't even get into the wheelchair. So by March, surgery was in January. Mm. And then by I think it was the second week of March, he was pretty much confined to the bed. And we realized that he couldn't come to the table and eat. We could not bathe him because he was big. We could not lift him. We could not get him to go into the bathroom. And then I believe we had decided to go with hospice care.
Well, you and I went to the center.
We went to the center, and we spoke to them. Mm-hmm. And basically, they had explained it went in hospice.
And palliative care.
Right.
It was both.
They would come in every day, and they would, wash him. They would bathe him, clean him up. They would do whatever they can, but they don't give any medication. But he wasn't taking any medication, and there really wasn't. He wasn't going for any medical treatments because he did not have the strength to be even brought to get into a car or even to be lifted into a car, mm-hmm. or even into an ambulance. So we basically knew that was probably the only alternative. And he was basically bedridden. Mm-hmm. And this was probably the second week in March. I mean, as time went on, the swallow, all the coordination, he couldn't even start to move the other side, and his swallow reflex declined. I remember, just making tons of smoothies and putting the straw into his mouth. I would just mix everything, almond milk, sweet potato, eggs, whatever I could, vegetables, fruits, whatever I could order and think of for nutrition, because he did not have the coordination to eat and to swallow. He was basically just laying in bed and sleeping and drinking.
And then I went to New York.
And then you went to New York.
I think it was for Passover.
No.
Sorry, Grandma and Grandpa, if I'm doing this wrong.
And then
it was end of March.
Right, but he was in hospice, and then, no.
No, he was in hospice at home.
He was in hospice at home.
And then we decided to transfer him to a center.
We knew that it was probably a matter of a very short time. So then we're getting into April, and then we decided to transfer him to the hospice center in the hospital, because we figured this way they could watch him 24 hours a day. Mm-hmm. So then he was in the hospice center in the hospital. You went up to visit your grandparents for Passover. And I was going there every day. He was really declining. Basically, every day I saw him, he was getting thinner and thinner and yellow. And, they knew, I knew. And I think basically, they said to me one day, they said, do you have any arrangements? Meaning they know what's going to happen shortly. And it kind of bothered me that they didn't say, we think you really need to stay around, it's a matter of hours. And they didn't say that to me. And that kind of bothered me. Like, if they know, why don't they just say, listen, I think you really should stay? So it was a Tuesday afternoon. It was April 3rd, and I left there at 3:30, and then
3:45 they call me.
They called you,
They're like, sorry, your father is no longer here.
And then you called me, and then I got upset. I was like, why didn't they tell me to stay? Because I said, why? I said, I will see you tomorrow. But what they should have said to me, don't leave. And that kind of bothered me.
Biodexa Pharmaceuticals is proud to sponsor the Glioblastoma, aka GBM podcast. Biodexa Pharmaceuticals is a small biotechnology company hoping to make a big difference in the treatment of glioblastoma. Using their proprietary nanotechnology, Biodexa is developing liquid formulations of an investigational drug which can be delivered directly and locally into the tumor via an implanted catheter. This drug has been previously investigated in pediatric patients with brain tumors. Biodexa Pharmaceuticals is currently running a clinical trial in patients with recurrent glioblastoma known as the MAGIC G1 trial. To find out more about the MAGIC trial, visit magictrials.com. Imagine waking up from brain tumor removal surgery knowing that your radiation treatment is already underway. That's how gamma-tile therapy works. At the end of brain tumor removal surgery, the neurosurgeon implants the gamma-tiles where the tumor is most likely to return. So instead of waiting to start daily standard radiation treatments that go for weeks, you get a head start against tumor cells and get back to your life sooner. For operable brain tumors of all types, including glioblastomas, brain metastases, meningiomas, gamma-tile therapy is a one-time, targeted radiation treatment with fewer side effects and a far less chance of hair loss than external radiation. Gamma-tile therapy is tough on tumors and easier on patients and caregivers. Learn more at gammatile.com. Gamma-tile therapy is an FDA-cleared radiation therapy for patients with newly diagnosed malignant brain tumors and recurrent brain tumors. Novacure is pleased to support the Glioblastoma, aka GBM podcast. Novacure strives to extend survival in some of the most aggressive forms of cancer through the development and commercialization of their innovative therapy called Tumor Treating Fields. Novacure partners with the Glioblastoma Research Organization to work together on behalf of patients and their loved ones impacted by GBM. To learn more, visit novacure.com. Rune was built by a team of patients, caregivers, and medical experts, consisting of neurosurgeons, neuro-oncologists, psycho-oncologists, radiation oncologists, nurse practitioners, and social workers who have devoted their lives to treating and helping glioblastoma patients. For anyone navigating GBM, Rune offers a wealth of medically vetted, digestible video answers to common questions. Answers are organized into major topics ranging from surgery to radiation to caregiver mental health. Check it out at rune.com.
But when I saw him that day that he passed away, he was a skeleton. I mean, he didn't even look like a human being anymore. But they should have really, to me, they should have said something. And that bothered me.
I don't think Dad would have wanted you there, though.
No, but his father was there that morning.
Oh, I didn't know that.
His father was there that morning, who was 97. They had told me that his father was there that morning to see him, and that they had told me that his father had said to him, "It's okay, you can go now."
Oh, I didn't know that.
You didn't know that? And then I saw him, and then I left, and then he passed away. So it was almost like he listened to his father. I shouldn't be laughing, but it's like he listened to his father. And his father said, "Okay, it's okay. You can go be with your mother now." He saw me, and then he left. So
that's upsetting.
Yeah. So it's like he didn't listen to me, listen to his father. But
25 years of marriage.
Yeah. But it was very heartbreaking, because they told me that his father was there earlier.
Yeah.
So, but they say a lot of times when people do pass away, they want to do it when they're by themselves, but that, I've heard that from many people.
Yeah.
So after that, I was in shock, and then I had to, make arrangements. That was very difficult, make final arrangements. That was very difficult. Mm-hmm. That was probably one of the worst days of my life, having to go, when he was in hospice, to the cemetery to make arrangements. That was horrible.
What was that like? I was there with
You were there.
but you can explain it.
It's something you don't think you have to go through in your 50s. You know, if you're like 70s, 80s, but it's something you just don't think you have to, something you don't really think you would have to ever deal with in your 50s. And then to go and decide, you know, where your husband is going to be, say his final resting place. That's a very strange, say eerie. It's a very difficult feeling. It's something very difficult to process that you just don't think you're going to have to do at this point in your life. But so that was very difficult. And then, you know, he passed away, and then we, of course, had the funeral. And
we were driving to the funeral. My car broke.
Yeah.
We were driving to the funeral, and the bumper of the back of my car
fell off.
Was half off.
Fell on the highway.
We were driving on the highway with the dog in the car.
Yeah.
And the grandparents in the car.
Yeah, that was...
We had to stomp on the bumper and break it off the car.
Yeah.
And go to the funeral.
Go to the funeral. And that was difficult, you know, of course, you know, the funeral and all that. And
how did Hachi help you through all of this?
Well, you had gotten the little dog.
No, I said I'm getting a dog.
You said you're getting a dog because
we
had another Sheltie, which had passed away, Chloe, 2.5 years ago, and we never really thought we never had thought knew we wanted to get another dog one day, but we just, I don't know why. I guess we weren't ready, and then when Dad was in hospice, he said, you know, now we're going to get it. We're home. It's a good time to get it. He loved dogs. He wanted another dog, and you had said we're going to get another dog, and I said, well,
I wanted him to name the dog because you named the first dog. I named the second dog Chloe, and I figured Dad should get a chance to name the dog.
Hachi was his favorite movie, which is a movie with Richard Gere, and a true story in Japan.
It's a sad movie.
With very touching for any dog lovers. It's a very touching movie. It's a true story in Japan about a man and a dog, an Akita dog, and how faithful the dog was. And the movie is the movie of the real story, played by Richard Gere, the actor, and the dog's name was Hachi. That's the name of the movie. So Dad was Dad's favorite movie, so we decided to name the dog Hachi. And you came home with a little 4-pound baby Sheltie, and she would sit with him on the bed, and she was just so precious, and I think it made him really happy. But I think at that point he was really, his illness had progressed, so he really wasn't able to interact with the dog very much. But I think it really helped us to have, you know, a little dog and a new life and, you know, happiness and precious. So that really, she's been a lifesaver to me up until this very day. You know, she's always by my side, sleeps with me every night, most loving animal, and just most wonderful personality. I'm so lucky to have such a beautiful little animal.
Do you think you could have gotten through all this without Hotch?
No. She's really special, and I think animals are just so special. And, you know, by myself, I really didn't have a family or anything, and I think the dog.
Thanks.
I mean, I have my daughter. No, my daughter. But I'm just saying, I didn't have a lot. You know, all of his family had basically passed away, and I mean, yes, you were here, but I know you went on a trip. Mm-hmm. You went on a trip after a few months, and I was basically by myself. So I think the dog really helped me to, you know, on a day-to-day basis.
Did it upset you that I left?
No, I mean, I felt that you needed to go on with your life, and, you know, you shouldn't have I didn't feel that you should have to just stay home to be with your single mom. You know, I wanted you to do what you want to do, and I think it was important. I'm not that way. I'm very independent, and I was happy that I had the dog, and, you know, and I tried to go on the best I could.
How was the adjustment of being single after losing your husband?
Very difficult, because when you're married for almost 27 years, you're known as a couple. And I was always known as the doctor's wife, Dr. Lee's wife, Mrs. Barbach. And all of a sudden, I'm not that anymore. Mm-hmm. I'm not a couple. I'm by myself. And I was in my work environment, people always knew me as a single person, but wherever I lived, I was always known as a couple. So it's a big adjustment. It was difficult.
What was the hardest thing?
The hardest thing is really trying to accept the fact that here I am, a single middle-aged woman. Which, when you're single in your 20s or 30s, it's very different than being single in your late 50s. To me, because it's different. It's just a different stage, and it's very funny. I always dreaded, like in all my years, meeting lots of single people. I used to say to myself, I would never want to be a middle-aged single person. And then here I was, a middle-aged single person, and it's just a very different feeling because, there's more and more single middle-aged people now, but then there's a lot of couples, and it's just a different feeling. But, I feel very grateful that I have my ballet and my teaching and my work. And, I mean, that really, I think, helped me a lot to go on a day-to-day basis. Whereas if someone loses their spouse and they don't have interests and they don't have any kind of work, they really are totally lost. So I had some sort of a life, and I had a dog, and I had a daughter. So it was very difficult, but at least I had some things.
How do you feel now looking, it's been 5.5 years, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Like, how do you feel now compared to like 5 years
How
ago?
do I feel now? I feel, as time goes on, you accept more and more, but you realize, I hate to say, your spouse is not going to return. And unfortunately, that you have to really go on and try to make another life for yourself, whatever it may be. Just try to keep going and move on. And, you don't want to let yourself deteriorate, that you're still living, and you really have to try, to make some sort of a life for yourself, whatever it may be,
What's the biggest lesson you think you've learned since Dad passed away?
Even if you're a part of a couple, you have to be an individual.
Interesting.
Yeah. Thing is, we spent so much time together. I mean,
You guys were never apart.
we were always together. Weekends, we were always together. We ate together. I would drop him off at work. I'd do my thing. I'd go back to the office. I'd spend time with him at the office. I'd take him home. We had dinner.
You get sick of each other?
No. Take my bath, watch TV together. I realized that we were just together so much that when he was not here, I wished I had more of my own life, because that was very difficult for me. So I would say to anyone, if you're living with someone in any kind of relationship, still have your own individuality. I think it's important, because unfortunately we never know when something can happen. So that's one thing that I learned. And now I'm probably the other extreme. I do what I want when I want, but,
On Hachi's timeline, though.
on my Hachi's time, right. But that's okay. But, I'm saying, just you have to have your own life, whatever it may be. So that's what I've learned.
How do you think Dad would react knowing that we have an entire nonprofit in honor of him?
I think he'd be very proud of you. I think he'd be so proud of the woman that you have become, the
Thanks, Mom.
entrepreneur, because we know
My grades.
your academic background. But no, I think he'd be very, very proud. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think he'd be upset that his name is literally all over?
No, I don't.
Okay.
No, I don't think he would be upset at all. I think he'd be very, very proud of the entrepreneur that you've become and the businesswoman. And no, I don't think so.
How do you feel like being involved with the nonprofit impacts you?
I feel very grateful and fortunate that I can be involved in this organization that helps people and will help many people in the future, especially creating all the awareness that you have created for all the people and all the families going through the different stages of glioblastoma treatments, because I know when I was, exposed to all this, I knew nothing. There was no foundation. There was no Facebook page. I mean, there was just no organization. There wasn't really anyone I could speak to. I couldn't call anyone up and say, I understand you're going through this. What are you doing? I had nothing. I had no resources whatsoever. So I think the fact that you're creating all these resources for people to connect, I think it's fabulous.
Is there one thing that you wish you had looking, aside from that, not wish you had, is there one thing that you wish you could change? Maybe something that you did or something that you didn't do in regards to anything related to Dad and his brain cancer journey?
Sometimes I wish I maybe would have sat by his side a little more,
Why didn't you?
I did, but I just felt like, maybe, I just maybe could have done it even a little bit more. That's just how I feel.
Is there any advice you'd give to a wife that's in your position now that you were in 5.5 years ago?
Be as loving and supportive as you can, because unfortunately your spouse will pass on and you will be on your own, and just be as supportive and as loving as you can, and know that down the line you're going to be on your own and you're going to have to create a life for yourself. Mm-hmm. Whatever it may be. But nothing is forever,
Is there anything else that you feel like is important to talk about that maybe I haven't asked you a question about?
People grieve in different ways. There's no timeline. There's no one thing to do or not do, because since my husband has passed away, I know other people whose husbands have passed away, not from glioblastoma, but from different things, and everyone's different. Everyone deals with death in different ways, and there's no right or wrong. There's no way of telling someone what to do and what not to do, because everyone is different. I've had different other widows have come to me and say, what have you done? And I have said the best thing I could say is to keep busy, keep a schedule for yourself, because for me, evenings were the most difficult. So I would say, make a schedule, keep to your schedule, don't just sit and do nothing, get yourself out of the house, whatever it may be, get yourself around people, whatever it may be, but keep a schedule and try to keep to that schedule, because it will be better for you mentally. Just do some things for you. And for me, keeping a schedule is probably something that really helps me a lot.
You just mentioned giving advice to people, but is there any really good advice that you got when you were going through that?
Honestly, no one gave me advice.
Really?
No one gave me advice.
Did you ask for advice?
I didn't really have anyone to turn to for advice, because I had actually looked for some support groups. There were no support groups in the area. So there were no support groups. I purchased a book or two online. I read that.
Did you read the books?
A little bit. Audible books.
My mom doesn't like reading.
I listened to that. I did not really have any friends that had gone through losing a spouse. I knew some people that had lost their spouses, but they were a good 10 years older than me. So they were older when their husbands had passed away. So that really, they just basically, they were at a different stage in their life. They were not in their 50s. They were like in their 70s. So it was different. So I basically went through it on my own, which was not easy, but I guess somehow I dealt with it. It was very difficult for me to be living in the same place And I stayed there for a year after he passed away because I just wasn't ready to move, but it was just very difficult for me to be living in the same place where he got sick and passed away, and especially being in a building where everyone knew us as a couple. That was very uncomfortable, awkward for me. I did not like that.
Yeah, I remember you mentioned that you were always like, after he passed away, you're like waiting for him to walk through the door.
Yeah, it was very weird. Dinner time, I would expect him to walk in, and then I knew he wasn't coming. And then I would go to stores in the area, and they would say, "Oh, where's your husband today?" I remember going to Whole Foods, and they'll say, "Oh, where's Dr. Lee?" And a lot of people would say that to me because we went to a lot of the stores in the nearby area, and that was very strange. Yeah. I remember the first time I went to Whole Foods, I was like shaking. It was just very weird for me living in that same environment, but yet I wasn't ready to leave that environment.
Once you left, did you feel better?
I felt better. I was like, okay, better. I'm starting to move on, create a new life for myself, even though it was difficult. But, some people like living in the same place where they had a life with their spouse. But for me, it was difficult. Mm-hmm. Everybody's different. I tried to move some things around, buy flowers. I tried to change things a little bit to make things a little bit different, like get a new comforter for the bed, just try to do a couple of different things that I could. But, I did the best I could do. I say as time goes on, you realize you just need to move on with yourself. And, I know other people will live in the past forever, but you really can't. Yeah.
Well, Mom, thank you for coming on the season finale.
You're welcome.
Of the show.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad I can share my story with everyone, and thank you for having me.
Love you.
Love you.
That's it for this week's show. Thank you so much for tuning in again to another episode of Glioblastoma, aka GBM. To get in touch with our organization, visit us online at gbmresearch.org or visit us on Instagram or Facebook at Glioblastoma Research. Visit us on Twitter at glioblastoma.org or visit us on LinkedIn at Glioblastoma Research Organization. To make a donation to the organization, which is fully tax deductible, visit us online at gbmresearch.org, where you can designate your donation in honor of someone or find other methods that you can make a donation with. Thank you again for supporting us, for supporting the show, and we'll see you next week. Welcome back to the last and final episode of our deep dive with Stash Strong. I have zero agenda for you.
We did it.
We did it.
You did it. Great season.
We did it.
Great season.
I thought it'd be fun to just chat about life.
Yeah.
So, Colin Gerner, how do you feel after recording an entire season with me?
Well, I can't imagine. Oh, I can because you told me, but I cannot imagine the editing and work that goes into something like this. But I think it's pretty incredible. Obviously, I watched all the episodes. That's how we were able to talk through everything. You were there on the episode in the editing room for hours. But, like, you take a step back, and I was thinking about this today on the train over of, like, what you've done year 2 of a podcast, moving from audio only, multiple times the viewership, video, names in the space, oncologists, surgeons, individuals who have lost someone, individuals currently fighting that. Putting that together in a story, I think, is the greatest thing we can do because someone will relate with that, right? And there was no podcast about GBM, right? There's 2 or 3 now in the entire space. That's powerful.
Like 1 billion podcasts, or there's like some number like that, and I think like 2 or 3 are about glio or like brain cancer.
Brain cancer in general.
It's crazy. 2 or 3 of a billion.
Yeah. So I think it's been incredible to watch you kind of like, again, find a new space, disrupt it, bring people in. I'm excited where it goes next. For me, it was super fun to be able to, chat in each one. But again, I think our little deep dive alone, you could be in a house as a family member and have that conversation, right? You could be, this part resonated with me. We need to look at this differently and how we're getting our treatment plan, right? If just 1 ounce of what you were able to pull out of these individuals resonates with someone, like you've made a difference in their life. And I think that's pretty powerful.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I feel like I have imposter syndrome sometimes where I'm like, what am I doing? I feel like we all have that sometimes, though, because, it's a lot.
I mean,
especially when you build a whole nonprofit. You're like,
There's no playbook.
Did I really do this?
Yeah, there's no playbook. There's no rules. There's nothing.
Zero rule book.
Yeah.
So that's been fun for sure.
You're making it happen. I think the more stories that can be told, right, the more people that continue to be added to this community and feel like they have a voice, right? Warrior Wednesday, we share daily during Brain Tumor Awareness Month. Like, getting these stories out, it's like we had over 120,000 unique impressions just on individual users from May.
It's crazy.
Just sharing stories, commenting on stories, right, passing them along, because you never know who's the next person who's going to go through this, right? It doesn't pick people. You don't know when tomorrow this might happen to you, but if you can Google glioblastoma, you can find the glioblastoma, aka GBM podcast, listen to one episode, you're not alone.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty cool.
So what's next for Staff Strong? What are you guys up to?
Yeah, I mean, we're at an interesting point as an organization where we're closing in on being basically event-based and individual donations close to like $1 million per year, which is still, it blows my mind to like be able to say that out loud. But I look back to my brother's fight and journey, and, you know, he did so visibly.
It's not beer, it's water.
Yeah, but I think it's pretty wild to think about how we're 20-year-olds in Manhattan, right? A world ahead of us, and now again, I trade it all to have him here and not have to be on a podcast about GBM and open up different things, but because that's the cards we were dealt, to see the ability to be $1 million annual organization and the research that directly funds is, again, I'm proud because what my brother went through has resonated with enough people that has believed in what we do. And I think working with organizations like yourself, and like even just when we can bounce ideas off each other, right, and collaborate. And
I feel like I text you every day.
Yeah, but
every other day, but definitely a couple times a week.
Yeah, that's how we get to like, hey, this isn't working for me. What are you seeing here, right? And so long, everyone's just doing it alone.
Yeah.
And I think that's my biggest takeaway. What Staff Strong is doing is we're collaborating. We're bringing organizations together that might not have talked prior. We're bringing organizations that have been around for 50 years, and we're co-funding grants with them, right? Because all of a sudden, if we're going to sit here and say we're patient forward and we support the family like mine, like yours, who went through this, we have to do that. We can't just talk about it, right? We have to be about it. So I think Staff Strong, where we're going, what we're doing, we're bringing more people to the table who have the resources, who have the connections, who have the dollars, that are committed as an organization to fund brain cancer research, and we're funding brain cancer research. And we're funding new and exciting clinical trials, right? New and exciting drug development situations, right? We're focused on something right now with an inhibitor that is not public knowledge yet, more will come out, but like is fascinating. And when you get deeper into a world, we weren't in the science, we're not in the neuro space before this, but when you can get excited about a drug that is taking out a blocker that's affecting 60% of GBMs, that's something to be excited about, because we know who's on the other side of that, the family.
I had this conversation yesterday. I think I know what you're talking about.
But, well, there's another one just came out, which is public knowledge, with MSK, separate. That's the IDH mutation that came out yesterday. It was like national news.
This is something else.
But a lot is happening. It's exciting. And that doesn't happen if dollars don't keep moving out the door, I guess is my point. What's next for you guys?
There's so much next for us. We have a 5K.
Yep.
We're launching our 5K officially. I think this will be past, though, the 5K. So we did a 5K.
Second annual
coming up. Season 3 of the podcast.
What's the plans? Is that public yet?
No plans, because I haven't thought about it.
Yeah, we're getting through this
one.
But
we're still doing this one. We just wrapped season 2 5 minutes ago. I'm working on it. Lots of exciting things that I want to bring to life.
Awesome.
But my brain has 5,000 things, and I need to put them on a chalkboard or a whiteboard and
pros
be
and cons.
This is what we're doing. What are we crossing off the list today? So lots of exciting things. It's a lot of growth and a lot of, we have our grant, which I'm incredibly excited for. We cannot share more details at this time, but very, very excited to be partnering with you guys on a new grant for research. Yeah, just a lot of really cool, disruptive, new ideas and creative things that aren't being done necessarily in this space. So I'm looking forward to it.
Good. Yeah, and our only other thing, again, my biggest thing is bringing people together. We have our annual New York City event every year in October. It started as the first time people got to see my brother post-surgery, post-radiation, post-chemotherapy. And I look back at that night as we're now in our 6th annual New York City event, and it was just a celebration of life. It was an ability and a moment for all of his closest friends. We packed the place like 120 people. We raised $10,000. We thought it was the coolest thing ever. Now it's a $100,000 event, right? Big sponsors, people that come in, but like I still watch a lot of the same people, right? And his old friends who have kids now and are moving on with their lives, because that's what we do when we are afforded tomorrows, and still make the time to come back and be at that and, reminisce with my parents about Gigi. And that's one of those events that to me is special, because that's what it was. It was 2 kids in New York getting people together, shaving mustaches at an event, and look what it's turned into.
That's amazing. I'm very excited for you. Lots of
It's
cool
exciting
stuff happening.
times.
Yeah, definitely. I don't really know how to wrap this episode. I feel like it's
kudos
supposed to be
you.
like a casual little recording session.
Your vision worked. I hope if everyone could take one thing away, the amount of time that doesn't get appreciated that goes in these types of things. Someone might just click play for 30 minutes on their transit. You're in the studio for hours making that happen. But like that's, again, a moment and a decision that you've made that's going to help a lot of people. And that is one of my biggest takeaways of this podcast as, again, a friend, a supporter, a fellow CEO of a brain tumor, brain cancer organization, is all the hope that something like this, and just taking the time out of our day to do recaps, right? You didn't have to do recaps. We're doing recaps as more time, a fun activity that hopefully is giving people even more support and knowledge in their personal fight with this disease.
Definitely. Well, Colin Gerner, it has been an absolute pleasure to
Thanks for having me.
see you many times throughout this summer in New York City. I hope everyone has enjoyed all of our deep dives as much as we've enjoyed recording them. So thank you all for listening. Thank you, Colin, for being a friend, a mentor, and many other things on the list. You've been awesome, and I'm excited for future collabs.
Here's to season 3. Boom.
Done.